Thank you very much. Yeah, 5 is a good limit, I think. Yeah, Dynamic Environments Group, Playful Design. So, LDC you'll be familiar with, and LDC's kind of interaction with light has always been evolving, hence in our tagline, which is just slightly off screen, it seems. But light beyond lighting is the principle of sort of everything that we do, which is a kind of a constantly evolving process. And we think that's important because, you know, as an industry, we need to evolve and keep going and keep changing. And that evolution is also evident in us as a company in itself, because LDC started some nearly 10 years ago now, and from that came other brands that grew out from these this desire for evolution, this change, if you like. And that's brought on things like virtual environments that we now have under Revere, and it's brought under things like software that we do under Unstatic. And it's all culminated within this group that's called DEG. But essentially here I'm talking about the actual work that we're undertaking for LDC. So Playful Design. Well, Playful Design is an interesting topic, especially for us, because it's something as a company that we feel has helped this evolution, and it's also something that we feel will keep us evolving, because Playful Design is at the essence just play. And that is something that's interesting. So what is playfulness? And if we do playful design, how do we evaluate if something is playful or not? Well, we're not experts in the field, but this gentleman is, and we were introduced to him. And he's actually done a lot of studying. He's a professional within this field. So I'm just going to read something that Jussi sent me to describe him, because I think he's best described in his own words. So Jussi worked at Nokia Research Center for 16 years, most of his adult life, as a game and interaction researcher before realizing that he could do something else in his life as well. So he quit his job and spent a year as a freelance performance art researcher in Berlin. He also wrote some really, really bad theater plays, which hopefully will never see the light of day. Not being able to resist the siren song of regular employment and a regular paycheck, he joined GE Lab in Europe in 2013 as a postdoc games researcher. Yuri's interested in play, obviously, technology, public and semi-public places, performance arts, and claustrophobia. He currently supports his PhD research team by leading and publishing and conferencing in discussions in the fortnightly Geoloquium, quite an interesting word, a regular meetup between PhD researchers to discuss research strategies, methodologies, and techniques. So you might have caught that he worked for Nokia in the playful elements of design, and I'm told, but I could be getting this wrong, that he actually worked behind Snake. Some of the older generation will know that, a very addictive game. So he knows a thing or two about addictiveness in games. So he actually came up with, when he was at MIT, these kind of categories for play, because this is what I was talking about in terms of defining what play is. So there's actually categories to describing what play is. And I've kind of covered a few of them, because they deal with things like cruelty, eroticism, and other sorts of kind of weird stuff that we don't use for design tools, but maybe we just haven't found a brand for it yet. So maybe in the future we'll do something with that. But basically these categories can all define how we create playfulness in design. So play. Why do we play? And why is it useful for design? Well, play is universal. Humans do it, animals do it. Play is also cross-cultural, so it transcends lots of different aspects of life, so it's universal. It's also rewarding, whether it's the thrill of doing something you're supposed to be doing, you're not supposed to be doing. It's kind of rewarding in that sense, or whether it's actually, cash rewarding. That's also an aspect of play. Play is obviously fun. That's kind of a big part of play. That's why people do it. And it's also captivating. So, for example, captivation for us is like this tool that we've developed with Revere to actually play when we're designing. So this is virtual environments that we've created, so when we design, we actually play with light. These are luminaires we're physically putting up in the space to design it. We can then tweak it to actually try and play with the actual atmosphere and get it right in 3D. So it's no longer sitting trying to studying things on paper. It's actually physically playing with real luminaires in real time. It's also a challenge, which is part of play. So this is Ricardo walking around a previous scheme in Ganglik Mall in Baku, where we created these interactive ceilings that create games, and they actually capture you as a person going through the space. And you can then play with the ceiling and actually play with other people in other ceilings. So it's this challenging part of play that's kind of interesting for us. It's also competitive, and competition is a key part to sports. So when we were designing this stadium, that was central to it, and the facade actually starts to mimic the actual activity that's going on inside in real time. So it can be low resolution, it can be high resolution, and actually capture the real-time play. Play is also expressive. So this is one of the previous projects we did with video selfie input. And we use social media, which is obviously very expressive. Everyone likes to express themselves on social media. So through a social media tag, you could actually capture yourself dancing on the facade and then retweet this to all your lovely friends and mostly probably family. And then it was automated with hashtags on there, so that actually the owner got a benefit out of this, so they could promote themselves through you interacting with the actual social share that you did. Play is also about fantasy. This was central to this piece that we did for Sci-Fi Channel in Madrid for a launch party. So it was actually a projection piece that we did to celebrate this kind of the centenary, I think it was, of that particular element, of going through the actual company chronography, if you like. And it won, I've got told off by Gorka actually, because I only put one of the prizes up there. Apparently we won a couple of other prizes. But it's quite unusual, I think, for a lighting consultancy to win media awards. But nonetheless, through fantasy, we got there. And friends, because, play is central to making friends and meeting people. So this was the case for UPM that you're seeing there in the background, which was all about sort of social interaction between people. Shamefully, I've actually post-rationalized all those projects back into play, so that we didn't actually set out to create play with those projects. But neatly, they kind of fit back into the whole play paradigm. But we thought, well, why don't we give it a real shot with a live project to create play within an actual project? So, well, here's the crime statistics for this particular project in this area in the UK. I'm not going to disclose where it is, but it's quite disturbing, the amount of crime and actual stuff that was going on that you can see on the categories there. So we thought, well, is there a way we could introduce playful design to kind of deter crime? And a few of you will be sort of familiar with the idea of passive surveillance, which is the idea that if you create an engaging space, you can actually encourage people to sort of stay and dwell in that space. And the more people that stay and dwell in that space, the more people tend to sort of gather. And because of that, crime tends to lower, because crime doesn't tend to happen in quite populated and well-visited spaces. But we brought another element to it, which we call playful surveillance, which is the idea by creating play, we actually create that surveillance, that captivation of people in a space. So by creating some form of play, we're hoping for people to stick around, to actually watch and stay in these areas and capture people. Virtuous cycle, not a new element either, but using these playful elements that you see there, we could actually create social engagement and then site activation. And through that site activation, you actually create more interaction with the playful elements, and then more so it goes round and round and round. That's the idea of the virtual cycle, that each time it goes round, it gets reinforced. So we created things like hold elements. So you actually hold people in particular troubled areas. So certain sites, certain areas of the site, they actually had more endemic problems with crime and potential problems. So we wanted to hold people. And certain elements we wanted to move people along. And this is one of the renders that we did. So instead of just doing functional lighting, we actually created an infrastructure in there to do pop-up galleries and pop-up areas of play, so we can put play furniture and ever-changing elements through it. We also created, which the client kind of fell in love with immediately. It's maybe a bit of a crazy idea to create this climbing wall inside an actual tunnel, and then how we light that in an engaging way, and pop-up elements, buskers, and changing elements that hold and captivate people in the space. But it's not just about that. Play is also about protective frames. So for example, the whole idea of dress-ups and stuff like that, the reversibility of actions, the fact that you can be a different persona and actually you're somehow protected from ridicule by the fact that you're wearing a mask or doing something in that sense. That's an important part to play as well. There's also something called participation trajectories, which is the idea that you have someone maybe in the act of play that encourages you to do a certain part of the activity so that you kind of get enticed into the play itself. There also has to be invitations to play, so it has to be kind of what's called affording enticencies, which is, I didn't know what that was, but I had to look it up. But basically, effectively, what it means is that it's something that becomes simple enough to understand what it is. So it has to be fairly explicit, like gambling. The idea that the act of what you're doing is sort of easily understandable. And then there also has to be something called flow, which is the idea that there's a sense of completion. There's a sense of that you can complete a task. You kind of lose yourself in things, and games are kind of key to that, especially these kind of more virtual games. And then there has to be a sense of closure. So there has to be either you can complete the task and it's done and brilliant, or you kind of get the near-miss scenario, like I've nearly done it, but not quite, and then so I'll try again. So that is a big central element to it. And on that note, I'm going to start to close. So we're coming up to our 10th year of the practice itself. So again, slightly post-rationalizing, I've sort of captured a series or a selection of different projects into a little video reel just to show you some of the things we've gotten up to in no way in a chronological order. Please don't come up to me afterwards and say, but you didn't do that one after Silo and you didn't do this one after that one. But so it's just a nice video. So I'll leave you with that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.